This is a torn ACL. Now, if your knee moves around like that, you'd probably be surprised to find out that I can do stuff like this, as well as a huge variety of other athletic movements.
Oh, really? Prove it.
Huge variety of other athletic movements, despite the fact that I've had a torn ACL for 14 years. And over those 14 years, I've learned a lot about how to come back from injury and how to avoid getting injured in the first place. Now, one of the most common questions people ask me is, what exercises should I do? And for a while, that question was a very, very hard question to answer because there are so many exercises that you can do. And when there's that many options, things get confusing really fast and it's hard to know what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. But me, I like simplicity, and over the years, I started to realize that the truth actually was much more simple than what a lot of people made it out to be. Because the truth is actually that you already solved this problem years ago. And if you get back to the exact training that made you an athlete in the first place, you'll be an athlete again in no time. And I'm not talking about weight training or sprints on the track, although I have nothing against those exercises, but we need to start back from the beginning, the very beginning. Let me tell you guys a story. The day you were born, they laid you on your back and you couldn't really do much except kick and maybe move your hands around a little bit. Now, you didn't know it at the time, but you had already begun your training to become an elite athlete by activating your hip flexors, by getting used to extending your legs out to their full range and strengthening your core. This became the foundation of your athleticism, and you kept working on it as you started to experiment with different ways that you could orient your hips. You even started reaching and trying to grab onto them because one of the only things that you already had that were strong was your grip. Eventually, your parents rolled you on your tummy, and then the real work began. You had to start picking yourself up and learning how to support your body weight against gravity. You started looking around and developing cervical strength all through your neck, lumbar strength and mobility all through your spine. You started twisting around and reaching for objects. You got your whole posterior chain strong and developed during this era of your life. You started reaching up for objects and developing shoulder mobility and learning how to rotate these limbs. Your hamstrings came online as you started picking up your feet a little bit and started looking around and moving your toes even more. You started opening up your hips and pulling them up. Now, at the time, you were just trying to solve problems. You didn't know you were training to become an elite athlete, but you were. And one of the biggest problems that you needed to solve was movement. How do I get from one place to another? And one of the first forms of movement you figured out was rolling over, which also meant that now you were learning how to rotate your lumbar spine and move your hips around. And every skill built on the last, and soon you started combining skills because you already had practiced activating your hips and strengthening your hip flexors, and now you had just practiced learning to push yourself up. So one day you rolled on your side and you picked yourself up into a seated position. And now life just changed for you. Because for the first time, you weren't stuck in a horizontal position, and you started to look around the world in a different way. You started reaching up for things, and you didn't know it at the time, but you were developing tremendous strength and mobility in your hips. You even started learning to reach forward, reach around, and rotate even more, and scoot and be mobile. You had to internally rotate your hips, externally rotate your hips in order to do anything because you couldn't walk yet. So this was the only way that you could get around. You started becoming fascinated with your toes, and you started moving your feet around and developing tremendous ankle mobility. This step took massive levels of coordination as you began to solve more and more complex problems. You began to start moving quickly places and scooting around. And you couldn't walk yet, but you didn't let that slow you down. You stayed persistent and you kept training. And as your hips became more mobile, you leaned forward one day and you pulled yourself over your toes, and then you ended up in a new position that you'd never been in before. And then you realized you could move from this position. And then you started crawling. And you started developing all types of new strength and coordination. And you wanted to get places quicker, so you started crawling faster. There were even moments where one of your legs may have come up off the ground like this, and one of your other legs may have come up off the ground, and you started squatting. And since you'd been spending all that time playing around with your ankles and your feet and mobilizing your hips, your body was ready for this position. In fact, this position started just feeling like a nice comfy way to sit and be. But you still didn't become complacent. You kept training, you kept crawling, and you kept squatting. You even started doing variations of lunges and all types of other movements that opened up your hips even more and got your legs stronger and developed your body's coordination to an elite level. And you wanted to reach even higher stuff. So one day you crawled over to an object that was nice and sturdy and you put your hands on it and you got in that squat position that you'd been practicing so much, and you pulled yourself up using your hands to help support your legs because your legs weren't quite strong enough to do it on their own. And for the first time, you stood and the world just changed again for you. But you couldn't hold this position very long, so a lot of times you had to end up sitting right back down into your squat position, but that was okay because you'd been mobilizing your hips and ankles so much that this squat position was comfortable for you. You could sit here forever, and that allowed you to keep practicing standing and practicing standing for longer and longer periods of time until you could start to move around while you were standing. And so you did that. And you would hold on to objects and move around while you stood. And then one day you let go and you stood on your own. And the first few times you stood on your own, the balance was really hard to maintain, so you just ended up falling back down into your squat position. But again, your squat position was comfortable. And even if you fell all the way back down into a seated position on the ground, that was also comfortable to you. You were no stranger to these positions. In fact, falling down in these positions only helped you get better at getting yourself up from these positions. Until one day you stood all the way up on your own 2 feet, and with elite balance and coordination, you took your first steps. Now you are a toddler and the world changed for you. Now the funny thing is, you spent about a year of your life mastering one of the most difficult tasks that there is in nature, walking upright on 2 feet. And as you could see from the progression, it's not a very basic task. There are a lot of skills that you have to master along the way just for your body to be ready to stand up and walk on your own 2 feet. And those skills are the skills that you need to go back and remaster. Because it was written in your genetic code before you added any external weight, before you started programming sets and reps and trying to come up with the perfect workout. It was already encoded in your instinct what the perfect workout was. You needed to progress through a series of developments. You needed to activate and mobilize your body and become familiar with every inch of the range of motion. You needed to be able to mobilize yourself through these ranges at high speed so that your body could build coordination and your nervous system would be ready to handle the demands of standing and walking. And the secret to your recovery is hidden in that progression. So when people ask me what's the best exercise to do, the answer is that it's not an exercise at all. The answer is that you need to train like a baby.
Train like a baby.
You need to go back to the same progression that made you an elite athlete the first time and find a spot where that chain of progression was broken, and you need to remaster that skill. And once you do, and once you become comfortable moving on the floor, just like you were as a baby, then all of those other skills like walking, running, jumping, become emergent, become a consequence. They start to naturally come out of the skills that you mastered as a baby in the exact order that you already mastered them. So I guess the only question left to ask is, are you ready to become an elite athlete again? Because if so, it's time to get on your back and start training like a baby.